all know, the November 2006 elections once again demonstrated that the millennials, our largest and most diverse generation, are a politically engaged demographic group with 10 million young voters in the midterm elections. Studies show that millennials are more community-minded than their predecessors and volunteer at high numbers. They show deep concern for inequalities and social stratification and are very accepting of peers that are of a different race, ethnicity, and sexual preference. They are also our most global generation. 20% of the K-12 students in our country right now are immigrants or are children of immigrants. The millennials have a unique social consciousness and worldview that has been shaped by the horror of 9/11 and the structural racism exposed by Hurricane Katrina. So listen up. We're going to hear about some amazing work. I don't want to take up your time reading their bios, so I'm going to let everyone tell you who they are when they talk about their work. Each person's going to speak for 5 minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A. I'll just introduce the person in the organization before they speak. And the first speaker we have today is Gabe Pendis from United States Student Association.
How's it going? Good afternoon. It's hot, huh? So my name is Gabriel Pendis. I'm the Vice President of the United States Student Association. I've been organizing since the minute I got on campus. I'm originally from Miami, Florida, where I grew up there, and a little bit myself. I don't want to take too much time with that. I was a street kid there, and I hung out with my boys, and I had my crew, and I dropped out of high school when I was 17. I got my GED. I thought I landed my dream job at KB Toys, and I was ready to go. And that's right, KB. And there was people who believed in me, who saw something different, and I was able to enter into Florida State with my GED because of the Oprah Brown program there. That directly targeted low-income, first-generation students. And even though I didn't have a high school diploma, they saw potential in me for whatever reason. And I think the administration probably made the biggest mistake they had made in a while by letting me in there. So, like I said, the minute I got on campus, I started organizing. And what I want to tell you, the title of the panel is, we voted, now what? Right? Because there's a lot more work to do than just voter registration, voter mobilization, and getting students out to vote. And we originally didn't work on voter issues. We were a small group of students, and what essentially happened was, it's my first week on campus in a summer semester. I was walking down the Union where all the organization tables were there, and I saw a banner that said Students Against Sweatshops. And I was like, yeah, I'm against sweatshops. They suck, right? Let's do something about this, right? Let's get moving, let's get going. I didn't know that there was an opportunity and ability to do any of this kind of work, right? All I knew was Miami and Asilo and the streets that I grew up on. So I took an initiative, we're gonna go, we launched a campaign. I'm gonna talk about our work in FSU in 3 phases. So this is phase 1, all right? Small group of kids, it was mainly just like your activist centered, mostly white. I was like the one Cuban kind of hanging around, just ready to go down, whatever. We launched a tent city that lasted for 114 days. We camped out on a university campus for 114 days in Florida throughout the summer. And we lost. We lost horribly. It was an embarrassing campaign, poorly run, but we were passionate, right? We were so involved about the issue that all we could see was sort of us in it. We were martyring ourselves, and this was happening because we kind of did it in a silo. We didn't have the support that we necessarily needed. We didn't have people coming down, talking about strategy, talking about organizing. But we were still committed. It didn't stop there. It didn't stop in sweatshops. It was the next time around, the Iraq war, the drums were beating. The war drums were beating, and all of us knew what was wrong. And we organized around the war. We mobilized 1,500 students a day after the war started on a walkout of classes, marched up to the Capitol. One of the greatest moments in life, I always tell it, was up in the Capitol in the bullhorn and getting everyone to sing Twisted Sister with me. We're not gonna take it. No, we're not gonna take it. Anyway, I thought it was really cool. Was that Twisted Sister? Yeah, it was, right? Okay. But we're developing a cadre here, a group of leaders, a group of organizers, and we had a little bit of support, people giving us some calls, but still nothing there, no infrastructure. We moved on to free trade issues, right? We brought 3 buses of students down to the FTA protests in Miami. If anyone knows about those FTA protests, they know that we just got our asses kicked for the most part by the Miami police there. went back up to Tallahassee, completely changed. And what we saw is that we were organizing the same type of students, right? We weren't building relationships across community. And we realized that something had to be different. So we changed it. This is phase 2. We built a coalition around education. We saw education as a broad-based issue that we could mobilize a lot of students around. We built a fighting for our rights concerning education. It was a coalition that comprised of already 40 campus organizations from across sectors. We built relationships there. We got to know students. After education, Coalition for Active Voter Education. This was 2004, the fall of 2004, where again, we used those relationships that we have built with our work in education and translated into our voter work. Right? These were communities that had never engaged in this type of work. Because what we had realized before is that we were pushing our issues in an environment that wasn't accepting to them, in a culture that didn't know about activism and didn't know about political engagement. So we had to change that environment. We had to change that culture. And during the voter registration, we had help. Right? We had the League of Young Voters that came down at Florida State. We had USSA that hired a campus organizer on our campus. And we had people begin to teach us, to talk to us about strategy, to talk about campaigns, to talk about relationship building. And we met some of the first students and first interactions we had with FAMU, our sister school in Tallahassee. And that will become critical later in our work. After 2004, we used this relationship to form the Progressive Student Assembly. Right? And I wanted to make sure that y'all see like these are different issues. What's key here is the relationships and the ability and the strategy that we had, the knowledge that we were able to gain through the infrastructure on a national level that was set up. The Progressive Student Assembly began to mobilize students. We got into student government because we saw student government as an avenue. One, at FSU, we had a $9.6 million budget, a huge amount of resources. Two, we were the elected advocates of our students, right? We had to build consensus on our issues that we cared about. We had to build consensus around ideology. One of the first things we did while we were in student government is to change the purpose of student government as an advocacy and organizing body, okay? So I want to paint a picture now of where we're at. This is about the senior year. I was the Senate president. We had student government leaders there. We had relationships with FAMU, many of whom we met at a YP4 conference, right? Again, another national organization that gave us an avenue and a venue to build relationships with students that we didn't have before. So here was FSU, here was FAMU, here was TCC, and here was a serious issue. Martin Lee Anderson, a young boy, 14 years old, beaten to death in a Florida juvenile boot camp within 2 hours of being there, and a cover-up that followed right after that, right? Beaten to death, but they said he died from sickle cell trait. I'm not talking about sickle cell anemia. I'm talking about sickle cell trait, right? The sheriff of Bay County in Panama City, where this happened, in the Redneckville of Florida, right in the Panhandle, the boy was airlifted to the Pensacola to be treated. He passed away. He said he asked that body be transported from Pensacola back to Panama City to do the autopsy that will lead to sickle cell trait. We saw the video. All the students in Tallahassee saw this video, this young boy being beaten to death by these guards, and we had to act, right? We had those relationships that we had built over the years of organizing that we had done, over the issues that we have worked on. And we knew that something had to be done. So we're in a room together, student government leaders from FSU, from FAMU, from TCC. And they're like, let's have a rally. I'm like, all right, we can have a rally in the governor's office, that's cool. And I don't know how it happened. Someone's like, well, why don't we organize a sit-in? And if you know me, someone telling me let's organize a sit-in in the governor's office, I'm like, all right, let's go. Right, so we did that, right? We organized a sit-in. We took over the governor's office. We used that sit-in to mobilize for a rally that brought over 3,000 students to the Capitol. 3,000 students. It wasn't just the town, it was students that were out there protesting for this young boy's death, right? It was one of the most intense experiences that I had in my entire life, right? It was after the voter registration. It was after the issues that we worked on. These student leaders came together, and what happened? What happened afterwards, right? That same night, the top cop in Florida, Guy Tennell, resigned because of what happened in the boot camp. We shifted $13 million into juvenile justice program in the state of Florida for early intervention programs to stop you from even going to the boot camps. Not only that, we shut down the boot camps in Florida as the way they were. Shut them down. This wasn't a student issue, but this was an issue that impacted all of us, that went beyond the college campus, that went into the community. It was something that we knew we had to act on. And my point here is that this didn't happen in a silo, right? This didn't happen out of the ether, out of nowhere, right? This happened out of infrastructure that existed. Someone telling me to organize a sit-in, I had never organized a sit-in before, so what do? Right? I call USSA, I'm like, so do you guys have like manuals or something on like how to do this? But they provided leadership and ability to do that, right? Same thing with like White Before. We needed media help out there right away, getting the press releases out there, making sure to get the word out. So I want to say, it's like, we now voted, now what, right? It's not just about voting, it's about building relationships. It's about shifting ideologies. It's about putting ideas in people who have never had it before. It's about building something better than all of us. And I think together we can do some really great things. This conference is showing that, and I look forward to meeting you all after that. So thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. Just one quick housekeeping note. On your chairs is a flyer which has contact information for all the folks on today's panel and yesterday's panel if you want to follow up and learn more about the work of these great organizations. Next, we're going to hear from Biko Baker, who is from the League of Young Voters.
See, I wore a suit today, but you see, you can take a brother out the hood, but the hood will follow you. Before I go, I want to thank the organizers of this conference, Anna for organizing and keeping us on task, and Anasa Troutman for the scholarships. And Anasa was like, Biko, I know you're Leo, so I'm gonna get you a hotel room, right? That didn't work because everybody is in my hotel room. I should have stayed in the dorm with everybody else. But let me keep going. So my name is Biko. I'm Biko Baker. I'm the National Organizing Director for the League of Young Voters. And I don't know how much you guys know about the League, but we started in 2003 when a notorious graffiti writer and author named Billy Upsky Wimsett had a vision of a multiracial. That's why I give it up for Billy. Billy had a vision of a multiracial, multi-issue-based organization that empowered young people to improve their communities. At the time, most people thought Billy was crazy. I still work for Billy, and I think he's crazy. But in 2004, we were in dozens of cities all across the country. And today, nearly 4 years later, we're still here. We learned a lot from our first trip around the block. The first thing we learned is that you can't be everywhere at once. So we scaled back. In 2005, we shifted our strategy and focused on building infrastructure in 6 states: New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Ohio, California, Maine, and Wisconsin. Everybody's here but Maine, and we'll get to why they're not here. We also provided training and technical support to young people in Minnesota, Florida, Missouri, New York, and Michigan, and a whole lot of other, but those are the ones we had big investments in. The second thing we learned is that building infrastructure is hard, but worth it. We run felon re-enfranchisement, ousted conservative politicians, and today, at this very moment, we are fighting for, and it looks like we're going to win, loan deferments for college graduates in Maine. Give it up. But it's not easy to do that. You have to build relationships. I get about 70 phone calls a day. So anybody that thinks that organizing is an easy job, it's not. You have to be consistent. You have to be there for the people that you're trying to mobilize. The third thing we learned is that the only way that we will see a progressive governing majority in our lifetime is if we all, regardless of racial or economic background, agreed to fight together. Of course, we don't always get along, but who would have thought that white kids in Maine would be working side by side with African-American youth from inner city Milwaukee to improve the country? Well, who besides Billy thought it would be possible? Now you may be asking yourself, Billy, Biko, see, I work with Billy so long, I call myself Billy. What does this permanent organizing infrastructure look like? That's a great question. In each of our affiliates, we empower people to approach problems in their community from a systematic and strategic perspective. In some places, it looks different. In Milwaukee, we do a lot of conflict resolution trainings. We go to the block, we do a lot of radio hip-hop ads. In Maine, it's the same thing with a little twist. They use a lot of spoken word and hip-hop culture also there. And in San Francisco, we had 15,000 people download our voter guide online. So we use a lot of tools where people are at. We just try to reach them. In my home state of Wisconsin, we have empowered young African Americans to tackle the most pressing issue in their community, inner city violence. Again, y'all may be asking yourselves, what does inner city violence have to do with the progressive movement? But to me, there is no more important issue for urban youth to be talking about, because the rising trends of homicides all across the country weren't caused by rap music, it wasn't caused by 50 Cent, and it wasn't caused by a natural proclivity towards violence. Let me repeat that. The violence was not caused by rap music, it was not caused by 50 Cent, and it was not caused by a natural proclivity towards violence. It was caused by 3 decades of conservative public policy that is aimed at disenfranchising and disrupting the lives of inner city families. Why else would the right fight to privatize schools, push for an unjust and unfair war on drugs, which, by the way, has sent more black men to jail than college, and work so hard to kill affirmative action? It's funny, the other day I was reading Vanity Fair, and Madonna said that one time she was in Africa, and a young boy came up to her and said, "Don't forget that we're orphans." And I want you to pay attention to this, because this is the reason why I do the work. I've traveled all across the country, in hoods all across the country. I've been in projects, I've been in inner cities, Pittsburgh, Hill District, Cincinnati's over the Rhine, Milwaukee's North Side, Watts. I've been all over. And when I travel, a lot of these kids that I come across, they're also orphans. So many of their parents have been locked up, murdered, and or are self-medicated. And those parents who are fortunate to have survived the war on drugs, Reaganomics, and the deindustrialization of America have worked so hard trying to nickel and dime, to get their nickels and dimes at places like Walmart, that the only time that they get to see their children at night is at night or early in the morning before it's time to go to work. So when the Milwaukee League, which goes by the Campaign Against Violence, we got wristbands, okay, registers 3,000 of its peers to vote, most of which came outside of a welfare building, or fights to defeat an anti-youth loitering ordinance in City Hall, or fights to reform the state's gun laws, they are not only empowering urban youth, but they're also building the base of progressive voters. And I'm gonna take a quick minute to freestyle. A lot of people think the young people or people of color will always vote Democratic. It's probably true, but if we don't, as young people, and I'm speaking to the young people in the room, if we don't push the party or progressives to be progressive, are they gonna be progressive? And the only way that we can push people to be accountable is if we were there on the first Tuesday of November pushing people to the polls. The final thing that we've learned since 2004 is that no one is better equipped to do this than us. And not just us, but young people, not just the league, even though we're fresh. Yeah, the coordinated campaigns and the 527s might drop into local areas during election season to make sure that progressives can get the 50% plus one. But this type of cyclical work not only disempowers local organizers, but it also makes people feel that electoral politics is only a part-time solution to our permanent problems. The League is here because we believe that the only way that change can happen is when young people, people of color, and every other average American citizen of every background fights together with their peers and neighbors to take back their communities. If we don't do it, who else will? Because no one is going to take back America but us.
Thank you, Biko. Now we're going to hear from Georgia State Representative Alisha Thomas Morgan and co-director of Young Elected Officials Network.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here with all of the young folks. I didn't know so many young people were here, so it's good to see you. I want to, before I go into my remarks, give a shout out to one of our other programs. I work for People for the American Way Foundation. Woo! Yay! And we have some phenomenal programs, and one of them that you heard referenced a couple times is Young People For, and our director is in the room, Shauna Thomas. Yay! And I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of the program. Can you imagine, how many of you organized when you were in college or are in college right now? Was there any program around by any chance that you could go to that would teach you everything you needed to know, give you everything you could possibly want in terms of resources to help you be successful? No. As a matter of fact, if you could imagine what life would have been like if you had those things, imagine where we would be right now as a country. And so Young People For is exactly that. And it's a program that provides all those resources for college students who want to do this important work. So if you're interested in that, see Shauna, youngpeople4.org is the website. It's on that sheet, but I wanted to make sure you were aware of that program. So I want to talk about what we do at the Young Elected Officials Network. And the best way I can do that is describe for you what I do. I'm from Miami, Florida originally. Yeah. Yay. Grew up in the NAACP, so that's where I got my training, became a young civil rights activist at 14, after my mom forced me to go to the meeting, that is. But after that, I was hooked. And so I had done all this organizing around different issues, education and juvenile justice and all that good stuff. Went to Spelman, became the president there of the college chapter, and was working really hard then to get people involved in the political process, particularly getting people registered to vote and out to vote for the election. But what I realized when we were doing all that work, that we weren't doing the most important thing, and that was what was happening in between the elections, whether or not people were getting involved. And so I had the audacity to run for office in Cobb County, of all places. And if I could just tell you a little bit about Cobb County, it was represented in Congress previously by Newt Gingrich and Bob Barr. Okay? The last recorded lynching took place in my district. Leo Frank, a Jewish man, was in my district in Marietta, Georgia. That's where I represented at first when I ran the first time. Anyway, so when I told people that I was going to run for state representative, they're like, ha, girl, that is cute. That's going to be a nice experience for you. And I would get like, $10 checks from people who knew what it was like to run for office. And so we had several challenges along the way, including my first campaign manager who dropped me as a candidate and put somebody else in the race with the same last name, and then filed a residency challenge against me. Yeah, try to do that and run for office at the same time. And so, long story short, we won. I had a 21-year-old campaign manager who was a student at Morehouse, and I became the first African American to serve in the House of Representatives from Cobb County. Thank you. And unfortunately, I was 23 when I was elected. I'm 28 now, and unfortunately, I'm still the youngest. So I'm working in Georgia to get some other young people elected in the legislature. But I share that to tell you that once I got to the legislature, it was one thing to win and to, convince people that this young black woman could represent this very diverse district. But the real challenges didn't come until I got to the legislature, when we had to deal with the Confederate flag, we had to deal with gay marriage, and my entire church had a petition to support the gay marriage amendment. And I was, the lone legislator in there saying that's the wrong thing to do. So imagine what it was like for me as this young black female, when everybody, mostly in the legislature, is white, old, and male, to be alone. And I remember one year I stood up to the Speaker of the House and was singing one of those freedom songs, and he wanted to expel me from the legislature because of standing up to him. And imagine what that's like to be 23 years old and you have nobody to call. Because nobody understands what it's like to be you, because you're elected and everybody else is older, and they don't know what it's like. They don't have the experience, and you don't have the resources. There was nobody I could pick up the phone and call and say, what do I do now that I have stood up to the Speaker of the House? And so then I met some people from People for the American Way Foundation. And I met Andrew Gillum. He's a founder of our program. And he talked about the same experience in being a commissioner in Tallahassee, because he was the youngest, or is the youngest now. And so we created the Young Elected Officials Network to provide a space for young elected officials who are 35 and under, who identify as being progressive. And so as you think about all the work that you hear about today and all the work that you're doing, this is one of the pipelines, what you're doing to bring people to sit at the table. Young people who know what it's like to organize around juvenile justice issues and police ordinance issues, all kinds of things. Who better to sit at the table to make good public policy decisions than those young people who are courageous, willing to stand up, say the things that need to be said, and just say, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to stand up and do the right thing because it's the right damn thing to do. So we have well over 300 elected officials that are in our network. Are any YOs in the room? Okay. There are probably other places, but it's all right. But we have well over 300, and we're really excited about that. And let me just tell you real quick, because I know I'm running out of time, and we can talk for a long time. There are three things that we do. We provide policy support. Something that we don't have, not just young elected officials, but progressive electeds in general. We have very little policy support around the country to help us come up with how we change these things in public policy. And so we partner with several progressive organizations, and we provide those services. So that if I decide I want to introduce a bill on juvenile justice issues, there are organizations that I can contact through the Young Elected Officials Network. We also have networking opportunities to share those experiences of how it feels when someone says, well, you know, I have a tie that's older than you, or my granddaughter is older than you, and you hear all those kinds of crazy stories and experiences as if you really care, but I'm here to do what's right. I'm here to, you know, pass public policy and do what I've been elected to do. And then also we do professional development. And so those are the three areas that we provide for our young elected officials. And now I'm proud to say that there is a support system. So all of you young people out there who want to make that next step, and this really is a great natural step for us to make, now there's a home for you. A place where you can pick up the phone, you can email, you can blog, you can do all those things, and there are hundreds of young people who are just like you, who share the heart for service, who share the heart of other young people who want to do what's right, who want to help take back America. There's someone now that you can call and be supported by, and a program now that is for us, by us, and of us. So I look forward to getting some questions later on, and excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity, and I took less than my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Thomas Morgan. Next, we're going to hear from Shakmako Nobel from the Hip Hop Congress.
Thank you very much, Anna. I apologize for not returning your calls more promptly. I'm definitely not going to go under my 5 minutes. Just one thing I got to do usually before I start, just to kind of set the tone for what I do, which is this. Now you'd be saying to yourself, why did you just do that? And the reason I did that was to indicate that hip-hop has the ability quite often to make something out of nothing. And if need be, we could have a party right here, right now. And we don't even need a sound system. I don't even need the mic. Anyway, 3 warnings before I actually get started. 1, I'm going to talk really, really fast, so bear with me. 2, I'm not nearly as prepared as Biko. And 3, I'm probably going to bounce around a lot. So if afterwards you're really, really confused, you can stop and talk to me afterwards, or you can just come up and criticize me. I'm not too sensitive a person. Anyway, just a little background. My name is Shakmako Nobel. I'm president of an organization called Hip Hop Congress. We started in 1997 in California. It was technically speaking founded by a gentleman named Rial Robinson, whom I met in San Diego, who had this idea. And the idea was that, okay, we all know that the music industry sucks. We all know that artists of a variety of different elemental forms, of course the 4 elements, graph artists, breakdancers, DJs, and of course MCs, all have much more to contribute to their collective communities than they are being allowed to or open to by the music industry. And he said, you know, why don't we just get together and do it ourselves as a group, which is essentially a move towards like what would be a union model, even though we didn't really see it that way at the time because we were respectively 18 and 21. And so I was like, okay, that's a cool idea. Why don't you come up to, he was in LA, why don't you come to Northern California and present it? So he didn't really even know me. We had met once. We talked about it twice, and he drove up to Northern California. He gave this really, really great presentation. He's a karate teacher, so you can imagine the power of the presentation, right? He was like, ah! Anyway. And so it was this wonderful presentation, and afterwards somebody walked up to me and they were like, I think he's trying to steal our music, which is kind of a problem. It's a trust issue sometimes amongst the groups that we work with. But in the long term, here we are, 10 years later. And another funny side note, in 2001 we wrote our first grant, and if you read that grant, one of the funny things we say is, if we don't get money soon, we're not going to be able to grow. And I believe we were 7 chapters then, and we're 45 now. Which is kind of funny. Anyway, to put in perspective kind of what Congress is doing right now and how it's relevant to the conversation we're having, I spent some time working as a campaign field organizer for a mayoral campaign in San Jose. And the reason I got that job was because of my experience as an organizer in culture, which of course translates into organizing in any other field if properly applied. And while I was doing that, I was having a conversation with one of the labor organizers about youth, and I asked them what their perspective on youth organizing was, and they said one of the most fascinating things in terms of youth organizing I'd ever heard. And what it was is that they don't view youth organizing as the mode or methodology to approach. What they viewed youth as is something to prepare for labor organizing, which is great, right? Because that means from anything from 1 to 18, it's not really that important until you get to your labor movement part and you have a job in which you can join a union. This is a fundamental problem, because in that very same building where all of these unions were working together, what I worked for was the South Bay Labor Council. It runs what is considered to be the finest field campaign group in California. There's a musicians union that was totally disconnected from everything that was going on in that place. And what that speaks to is the American disconnection from its art and music. Very often art is in the museum and it is dictated by the critic. And very often music is in the corporate label and is dictated by the critic or the magazine, as opposed to the hundreds of thousands of artists that are on our streets and on our block that are our brothers and our sisters and our children and our students, which is what would be considered at least one of our target bases. One of the things that we've kind of run into sort of, actually let me back up a step. We started off, like I said, as an artist organizing collective. In 2000, we met two gentlemen named Jordan Bromley and Ron Gubitz, who were interested in using a similar model for campus organizing. Somehow this became our claim to fame, I think because campuses have more resources and we're thus often more visible, although our artist base has pretty much always been there. I am a reflection of it. And so, thank you very much. And so over time, we expanded into kind of a combination of a student organizing model, an artist organizing model, and a community organizing model, because as we went outward and started getting more and more artists and more youth involved, there were natural overlaps. We found people who were artists but were also educators, or we found people who were academics but were also DJs. And so kind of what I guess I'm coming to is that what HHC has evolved into is an organizing model that basically operates off of what I'll call the cluster. The cluster is a concept that was extracted by a young woman named Julie C., who's located in Seattle. And it was a reflection of a study that was done by the Seattle City in regards to their music industry. And what that study basically said was that the music industry in Seattle actually produced several different industries that created a cluster of operation. So yes, there was artists, but from those artists, you had people who produced and sold instruments, people who did printing, you had people who did education work, you had people who did articles, and all of that created a cluster of economy that was actually a very functional power base. Hip-hop is functioning in a very similar cluster, only it's a little bit wider because it's not just music, right? It's music and it's art and it's dance and it's all these other things. And so Congress ultimately is moving towards a direction where it's integrating that model into regional organizing forms. And so, for instance, in the Bay Area, we have 2 college chapters, 4 community chapters, about 30 different artists, I'd say about 5 different academics, and 3 or 4 journalists kind of working in tandem on a regular basis. The idea then becomes how many numbers of these different groups can you put in different regional clusters and then organize on a national basis, which essentially becomes sort of a national power building model or method. Just a couple of examples of this, and I actually wanted to pass these things around for you guys to read. There's a program in Mississippi called the Mississippi Artists and Producers Coalition. There's a gentleman walking around here, his name's Kamikaze, excuse me, and he's actually one of our regional coordinators developing sort of the same model in the South, in Mississippi, Alabama, and hopefully Florida. And I just wanted to read a little something that he wrote in regards to his organization, just to put in perspective kind of where the cluster model comes from and what it is capable of doing. Mississippi, a state with a long-standing history of cruel rights, atrocities, also has an extensive history stemmed in blues, southern soul, spoken word, and hip-hop. Many of our musical forefathers have ties to the Magnolia State, but yet Mississippi has often been overlooked during the South's recent rise to prominence in the industry. After decades of crippling racism, Mississippi has now experienced a creative renaissance. At the forefront of this research is the Mississippi Artists and Producers Coalition, or MAP LLC, the brainchild of Kamikaze, artist and president of Hourglass Entertainment. MAP was formed out of a need for a vehicle to better unite Mississippi artists and their companies regardless of affiliation or musical genre. Out of that original singular goal came a coalition designed to not only help promote Mississippi artists, but a coalition that promises to exercise creative, social, and economic muscle. In addition, MAP pledges to better inform new artists on the ins and outs of the music industry while at the same time better preparing them for life after music. This group started 3 years ago as a music collective, evolved into a nonprofit because it was in Mississippi, Katrina hit, and it responded to it. And through its power building base, it's actually gotten to a point where now mayoral candidates and state candidates feel obligated to come and speak to its members because its members represent 250 different artists throughout the state of Mississippi. Ultimately, what Congress is attempting to do is nationalize models like that and make available to whatever progressive movement should be out there, a cultural force that America has not had the ability to produce yet, if you will, kind of like a cultural AFL-CIO. Because there is, in fact, more than enough reason to believe that the divide between campus and community, or the divide between the artists in the boardroom, can in fact be bridged. That in fact there are common interests in all of those areas, and that if those interests can be found and can be organized, that a huge base of power emerges, not just for the artists and cultural community, but for all the communities that they represent, which in many instances are communities that are plagued by gentrification, that are haunted by the prison industrial complex, that face rising numbers of gang violence, black and brown violence, a variety of different violence types, whose artists face, like I said, the alienation of a country that does not authentically understand that this is a job and we're not positioned to eat. We're just not positioned to eat as artists. We don't have any union or labor-like support. So anyway, I apologize for going over my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shakmako. Now we're going to hear from Adam Klaus from Working Assets.
Wisconsin.
All right, so I'd like to make the case for tools, particularly web tools, as pieces of an infrastructure that empowers the youth movement. So to set this up, I want to go back a little ways. My organizing history has its root back at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And that's where I got involved with USSA, and it's great to see the pipeline in action here, sharing the table with Gabe. So anyhow, I did a lot of activism on campus, and then as my first job out of college, I went to work as the training director for USSA at the national office here in Washington. And so I was kind of this like wide-eyed and excited kid to be in the city for the first time, working in national level politics. And then I went in and started work, and on my first day I asked Dean, where's the database? You know, I wanted to know where the database was. I'm a little bit of a nerd. And somebody sort of pointed me in the direction of a couple of Excel spreadsheets, and one of them had a list of maybe 100 campuses with some student government contacts on them, and we weren't sure when they'd been updated last. And another one was a list of like 35 board members, and then there were a couple other ones that had lists of people who had come to conferences for the last couple of years. So
It's different now.
I know, it's different. And so I kind of said, wow, you know, how can I do work when I don't know who to talk to? And that I think maybe gives some insight into why I guess, I mean, I don't know if you can call it a passion. It is a passion for developing tools and thinking about systematic ways that we can help organizations, and especially youth organizations, do the work that needs to get done. So that sense of not having the tools to do what you need to do and not knowing where to look for them can be a pretty scary place to start. But let's fast forward a couple years, several years, because I think we're in a much better place now with regards to easy, cost-effective, and accessible organizing tools that are relevant to youth organizing in the youth movement. And that's really thanks to a whole slew of innovators in the internet world, and undoubtedly more than a few of them have been young people. But the web has really changed rapidly in the last few years. And I'm not sure if you can draw a hard and fast line, but today's internet looks a lot different than it did, say, back in 1995 or 99 or even 2001. Some people would call these innovations Web 2.0. I'm not sure that I have a full definition for that, but basically Web 2.0 allows for lots and lots of user-generated content by anybody who's using the web, and ways to share that content across systems and platforms. You can trade information, collaborate, and all of that. So examples of things that are Web 2.0, think about Facebook and its new open platform where you can build applications that live right in Facebook and share with your friends. Think about photo sharing on Flickr and how you can actually pull photos out of Flickr and use them on other sites. Think about Google Maps and mashups that you can do with Google Maps, where you can plot points on them and use them in all kinds of other programs. Think of all the blogs out there with RSS feeds that you can share across blogs and aggregate and integrate with news feeds and all of that. Think about podcasts, think about widgets, think about YouTube videos that you can embed in blogs. So this web environment is a place where youth organizing, I think, can really flourish. It's an incredibly rich environment. There are tools out there where any citizen of the net can contribute, collaborate, amplify, and share all kinds of content. And so this rich environment, I think, also really turns the tables on more entrenched top-down models of organizing, where people are really used to controlling their campaigns and the content that happens through their campaigns in a central location. And that might make some folks kind of uncomfortable. But I think it meshes really well with the new culture that a lot of new, younger organizations are operating in. So here's just an example, and I'm not an expert in this case study. It's something I'm recounted from something that was recounted to me. But there were some students, I believe in Minnesota, who took Facebook, and they took their student directory, and they went through their student directory and looked up everybody on Facebook. And you know on Facebook in your profile how you get to display your political philosophy. And so they went through and made a spreadsheet with all of the people in the directory, with all of their political philosophies, and then they could basically sort and turn out only progressive and liberal students in the election. They made a voter file off of Facebook. So incredibly creative and effective things that are going on out there because of web tools. So now I am with Working Assets out in San Francisco, and we're working on another tool that I think is going to help take online politics, particularly online voter registration, to the next level. Some of you might know Working Assets as your wireless phone company or your long distance provider or your credit card company. And if you don't know us that way, you should get to know us. And let's just say there can be ice cream involved sometimes. We give away free Ben & Jerry's. But more than that, more than a phone company, we're a social change organization that's given away over $50 million to progressive nonprofit groups for the last 20 years. And even on top of that, on top of our funding, usually if we see a gap in the work that's going on in the progressive community, we'll launch our own campaigns or build new infrastructure that meets a critical need. So that's where the online voter registration program comes in. Back in 2003, we set a goal of registering 1 million voters, and we were going to meet that goal, we needed to do a significant portion online. So we met that goal, and we've kept doing it ever since then. And between us and Rock the Vote, who we share technology with and is the other center for online voter registration, we've done 2,146,007 online applications through the end of May. Wow. Yeah. So we know those people got through the process online, but we've done some analysis to figure out what exactly happens with them after that, and we found that that list of voters that we've built is really, really relevant to youth organizing. So for Rock the Vote's numbers, over 70% of those folks were under 30, and for Working Assets people, and we didn't even target on age, 50% were under 30. So the people who are registering online particularly are young folks. And we also know that it's effective in terms of turning out voters. The same analysis showed us that around 60% of those people who made it through the process online, regardless of we don't know if they sent in their application or any of that, actually ended up voting. So 60% of that 2.1 million got to the polls, which is very exciting. It shows that that's a really, really productive and valuable list for organizations. So clearly online voter registration is an area where we can successfully engage young people in the political process. We can also do it cheaply. We've found our internal costs at Working Assets are about $1 per registration, which is much, much cheaper than can be done in the field. So it's a great way to get a lot of people for very, very few dollars. So this year, we're rebuilding our tool again to keep up with technology changes and to bring us into the world of Web 2.0. So just to go through an overview of this, I did a much longer presentation on this in another session, and apologies for any nerdiness here. But the first concept that we're building this on is to have an open API, which for folks who are developers means that you can use a set of very simple functions to integrate this into applications across the web. So it'll enable lots and lots of folks to build voter registration into existing processes out there. And the second part of the new project is that we're going to offer a widget application, which essentially also feeds off of that same central engine. But it means that for folks with no programming skills, you can take voter registration and make it live directly on your website, on your blog, or any place that people can visit on the web. So partners will be able to come, sign up, create a login, download code, just like if you're doing a YouTube video, you can paste it into your blog or whatever. And when people come to the public side of your blog, they'll see a full, an application where you can fill out a voter registration form with just a few clicks and generate a PDF version of that form that they can print and send in. So another key piece is that partners who host the widget will have full access to their data. So you put it on your blog, anybody who registers through your blog, you'll be able to log in and get that list. And like I said before, it's a very valuable list. You know those people vote. You know they're engaged. So it can be used for lots of other purposes for your organization. So in these ways, we hope to distribute the voter registration process across the web to let people and organizations register the people who they know and trust them, and maybe even get a little competitive in the process. And again, they'll get something back, that list that they can use for efforts down the road. So I think it's really exciting to think about this and other web tools in the context of youth organizing. There's definitely, I think, a hunger out there for new ways to approach politics. And so we're happy to take this tool and kind of throw it out there to the sharks, so to speak, and see where folks take it and run with it. And on top of that, I hope other people follow this example and make the necessary investment in this kind of tool infrastructure for empowering youth organizing. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. Last but definitely not least is Jefferson Smith from the Oregon Bus Project.
So every social movement needs a chant. You know, what do you want? It's justice. When do you want it? It's generally now, right? What do we want? We want freedom. When do we want that? It's now. What do we want? Peace. We really want that now, right? So I was emceeing a global warming rally the other day, and this is what I came up with. What do we want? 80% reduced carbon emission standards from the 1990 levels. And when do we want it? By 2050 or preferably sooner. It's largely non sequitur, but I don't beatbox. I wear my beatbox on the inside. I want to get a sense of who is here, because I want to use my next 4.5 minutes to be helpful. Raise your hand if you are here because you may want to run for office at one point or want to work on a campaign in the upcoming election cycle, or maybe a political organization. All right? Raise your hand if you're here because you work with now a youth organization like Lonnie Shapiro from Traction, plug. Okay, raise your hand if you work for an organization, that, funder or otherwise, that takes an interest in young people organizing, even though you might not specifically be. All right? And raise your hand if you're just an interested party, curious, or are in the wrong room. Nobody runs to raise their hand. I'm not in the wrong room. I'm in the right room. So I want to do 4 things. I want to give some background ideas. I'll give a commercial for the bus project, at least by way of introduction. And then I want to give 4 lessons from that, and then give a quick pitch and a thank you. 2 background needs. One is the disengagement of young people, not merely as voters, but deeper than that. Right? Most of us have seen, many of us have emailed about the data regarding the percentage decline until recently of young people voting. But I want to give you a different fact, and that's youth volunteerism. Young people, about 40% of them will volunteer for something over the course of a year. It is the most civically active age group there is, at least measured by volunteerism that there is. But as of 2000, only 2 to 3%, and now the best data says 4 to 5%, will volunteer for a political campaign or a political candidate. They'll clean a beach, but they won't support a candidate who'll require the beach to be kept clean. We've depoliticized our next generation. And to put that in perspective, in my state of Oregon, if you increased that by 1%, it would be about 3,500 people. And that would be one of the biggest field forces in the state if you increased it by 1%. Second background fact, and that is the need in, I think, our movement for efficiency. I believe we and you are the coalition of the benevolently irrational. The good people doing good things for no good reason. And without you, democracy is not possible. It is not in any of our economic interests to invest $1 million so we can breathe imperceptibly cleaner air or drink imperceptibly cleaner water or have a little bit more social justice in our world. It is in none of our self-interest to spend that kind of money. It is in a myriad of self-interest of a myriad organizations to spend $1 million for the evisceration of regulations so you can make $1 million in one additional profit. You are the coalition of the benevolently irrational. We can't win playing the same game. We have to be more efficient, more cost efficient. We have to figure out ways to get things for free. Not that they are free for the funders in the room. Please give them money. We have all we need. But so those are the two background ideas. One is leveraging young people to not only as voters, but as an army. And two is the necessity for efficiency. I'll give a quick commercial for the bus project. The brand statement says the bus project is an innovative vehicle, get it, for hands-on democracy. We drive votes, we drive leaders, and we drive change. And yes, we have a bus. We do three primary things. The first is, not in any particular order, we do voter registration, registered a little over 20,000 voters in Oregon last year, biggest voter drive in our neck of the woods. Second, we run a program, not AmeriCorps, not Peace Corps, but Politicorps, for kind of the next generation of some of you people, and that's not Oregon focused, that's nationally focused. And third, we actually have a bus and we take it to swing districts and advocate for candidates with a PAC and for issues without a PAC, and on behalf of our 6 E's: education, environment, equal rights, election reform, economy, and healthcare with no H. So this is what we do. It's true, I didn't just make that up. That really is what we stand for. We have, and we try to do funny stuff. Like we do an alternative candidate debate called Candidates Gone Wild that sells out a concert venue twice a year. We do a Halloween canvas called Trick or Vote, which I want to talk about in a moment. And a grant program was just started to create bus-like things in some other states. So I want to give, so I can be helpful to the 3 or 4 different types of people who are in the room in terms of why you're here, a few lessons that I think our little state can be helpful to your work elsewhere. First lesson is the lesson of zoom factor. I think that we make a mistake by having our organizing focused on mechanics but not big ideas. I think we also make a mistake by having our organizing focused on big ideas but not mechanics. And the infrequency of the combination of being able to give a bit, hey, I'm with ACT and Bush sucks, please vote. My big picture message is Bush sucks. I agree, right? But I don't know if that's a big picture message. And my mechanics is please vote. We have been far more successful in engaging people at a deeper level when we've given a little bit more meaning, we've given a little more connectability. Second, the idea, and I'll do this one briefly. Anybody ever read the book Moneyball? Okay, it's about baseball, right? But it's also about a bunch of geeks who figured out that Major League Baseball was doing it wrong. They were overvaluing guys who looked good in their uniforms and stole a lot of bases, and they were undervaluing fat guys who got a lot of walks. Right? And what we realized was that volunteers and fun politics and doing things that could generate earned media, and me, basically, I'm a fat guy who gets a lot of walks, and that we look for programs that are just as fat or fatter. And I mean with an F, as I wear my beatbacks on the inside, he's like, that guy's hip. No, he's not. It's all right. Passionate, makes up for it. So that's second, looking for efficiency and finding them. Third, triple bottom line. As we engage people, we look to a different kind of triple bottom line than social investors usually think about. And they are these 3. First, the actual voter contacts, measurable results at the doorstep, voter registrations, etc. Second, buzz, right? Actually changing the conversation, because as you're out there trying to generate volunteers, spending your money in that way and not merely hiring organizers off a phone pole, you are actually starting to impact to some degree the conversation. And third is leaders over the long term. And if we can capture all 3 of those pieces of a triple bottom line, we think we can be a fatter guy who gets more walks. And last is the Ben & Jerry's principle. People, raise your hand if you've heard of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. I like asking that at this place because they're like, I only eat one kind. I won't use that one again. I thought it was funny to me. Apparently Jerry, so goes corporate legend, has no taste buds, right? And Jerry is the guy who does the tasting of the ice cream, right? And the reason, I'm not making this up, and the reason that, there's so much stuff in it is because it has to get through his thick tongue, right? That's why it's, chunky monkey and not just monkey, right? That's why it's, I don't know, I can't think of any other flavors. So the flavor I can think of. And what we realized, we do silly stuff. We do fun stuff. We ran Hip Hop Voter Drive in 2004. And we realized that and we did it largely because we didn't have any money, right? We had a thick tongue. And so we had to find ways that we could get people to do things for free. And so one lesson is test your models, test your ideas, test your programs through an optic of volunteerism. If you can attract people to do them for free, you're probably doing a good thing. If you can't, you might think about how you can get it done with volunteers added, how you can sex it up a little bit. Last thing, my pitch and then a thank you. The pitch is for trick or vote. The idea is if the best way to increase voter turnout, says OSI and Pew and League of Young Voters and everybody else, is face-to-face voter contact, knocking on doors, that sort of thing. What's the one cultural tradition every year we anticipate someone knocking on our door? Halloween. When is Halloween? Right before the election, every 2 or 4 years. So we might be too old to trick or treat, but you're never too old to trick or vote. In 2004, we put together 800 people in Portland alone to do this, biggest canvas event in our state history. 227 of them checked the box saying, I'd never done anything in politics before, attracted by the idea of wearing a costume, not merely, my costume was I took a baby doll, I tied a rope around it, and I tied it to my belt, and I dragged it around. And then people said, what are you? And I said, well, that's the child that got left behind. And it was terrible. So I'm very sorry. But to put this in context, it sounds like a cutesy idea, but the idea is the AIDS walk, right? Race for the cure. Thousands of people show up to that crap. If you're a candidate and you got 10 canvassers, you're feeling great. You get 100, you make the newspaper. Imagine if you had 5,000, right? All of a sudden, power to the people would not merely be a slogan used by every 1 out of every 7 presidential candidates, 1 out of every 4 years. It would be something closer to an operative reality, right? The cutesy idea could be powerful. And finally, I just want to say thank you. Because, without folks, I have more, but I want to get to questions. Without you, democracy is not possible. And I'm done. Thanks very much.
Okay, so here we heard from 6 incredibly innovative folks that are developing really key infrastructure for building the youth movement. And I want to open it up to you all for questions. If you can direct them to the whole group or specific folks, and I'll just repeat them on the mic because I think we're being videoed. So, any questions? Comments? Suggestions? Reactions? And if you could say who you are as well. Okay, Amelie from Youth Venture has some resources and tools at youthventure.org, is that right, to check out, and wants to know about how you guys work to empower youth.
So I work with the United States Student Association, and our organization has been around for about 60 years. We have a history of empowering youth and young people and bringing student leaders who have become, Congress people, Barney Frank, who, people have come through the Congresses, and Jesse Jackson and Ira Lowenstein and others, right, throughout history. And we've done that because we've created a space for democratic living, right? We've allowed students to come together as a form of a union to really build together. And more importantly, we allow students around the country to build relationships. And we take that both on a national level and a state level. We're working right now to build statewide infrastructure in a number of states in terms of statewide student associations. These are organizations that bring students from around the state to work on issues that they care about, particularly around education. And let me be very clear about something, is that the right understands this model and has worked to take it apart. They have taken apart statewide student associations around the country. I personally come from the Florida Student Association, where it's been taken over by the Republican Party for the last 15 years. They got rid of the General Assembly, made it a board of student body presidents only, so no students participate outside of the student body president. So it never trickles down to any students. There's no way for students to get together to practice what democracy is, to get involved in issues, right? They've kept it small and they've kept it elite. They have one staff person who gets paid $55,000 a year and does nothing but lobby on the Capitol and has no relationship with students. So you want to empower people, you build those relationships, you give them the opportunity to come together and to organize and to mobilize and to build for change. And there's different ways of doing it. Jefferson has some very dynamic examples of ways to do it, but I'm part of the old school, and I think it's, it really just comes down to those relationships. It comes down to giving people the opportunity to make real concrete change, because I believe very firmly that when you're talking to a young person and you say, look, if we do this right now, we're gonna affect some shit, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're gonna change something here. And they will act, right? And they will act because they trust you and they have those relationships there. So relationships are key, and that's it. And Alisha?
I'm about to brag real quick, just to make a point. Yeah, I'm a Leo again. I'm a dissertation away from a PhD at UCLA, and I'm the politics and cultural correspondent for The Source magazine. That means nothing to the people where I'm from. You know what I'm saying? We have this thing in the league, or a lot of people work with, talking about celebrity organizers. People just go in and, hey, I'm here, like the lobbyist he was talking about. It means nothing to the people that we have to work with. The only way that we can make change in this community is if we model excellence. And I was talking to the people in Milwaukee the other day. It's like, when I go to the hood, I go to the block, I put on my Superman or Spider-Man suit, and I go in some of the roughest and poorest neighborhoods in the country, and I keep it real, and I talk to them, and they see my sincerity, they see my honesty, and through that, we talk about clear water. If I give you a glass of dirty water or give you a glass of clear water, which one are you gonna drink? The clear water. People know what clear water tastes like. And the only way that we can build leadership is if we model excellence and model leadership.
We'll take one more on this question, and then is it okay if we read a couple more? We only have a few minutes for questions.
This is it's a little 5-pointer actually. Give them the tools, give them the support, give them the space, give them the credit, and stay the hell out of their way. Mm-hmm. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, we have, I want to be able to take a couple more questions, so let's try to be brief. Okay, there you go in the back.
Hi, my name is Justin Perez. I'm the executive director of Living Liberally. Plug, plug. I used to think that I was organizing young people, not as young as the folks you talked about, because we started drinking liberally, which is now national. 21 and older. We used to say we organized people in New York in their 20s, until it started in other cities. We started getting photos of the Pittsburgh chapter, and it was a bunch of men in their 60s with white beards. We now stopped saying that it was a drinking club for young people interested in progressive politics, and actually that has been a source of strength for it. Around the country, there are a lot of very intergenerational chapters. The New York chapter remains very unprofessional. Some are very old, some are family-oriented, but the strongest ones are intergenerational. I'm curious, because Jefferson's particularly bus project work is not specifically youth-oriented. I have to imagine that of the 800 people who volunteered,
Okay, Justin Krebs, Living Liberally, Challenges and Opportunities of Intergenerational Organizing and Organizations.
So I am about to turn 34, and we have a plan to lobby the people who do these studies to migrate northward the definition of young voter as I age. And I think that will benefit a lot of other people in the room, so I'm there for you. I don't know. I think about, like, Jammin' 95 radio. And is Jammin' 95 radio, that's the hip-hop station in my town. And is that radio station a radio station for young people? I don't know, kind of. Are Nike shoes for young people? Kind of. And so we try to be youth relevant, but not youth exclusive, for at least two reasons. One, because one of the biggest values, because we want more people to come.
That's right.
Two, because one of the bigger values we can offer a young person is, sort of organic networking, right? They're not there just to see another 24-year-old. They'd love to meet a state legislator, even if they were, 40. So that's the second. And then the third, this is a new one. This is one that I think Billy's still in the room, or at least he was. And this is what I think that we need to be thinking about as a movement. I look at universities, which are clearly catering to largely young people, not exclusively. High schools cater exclusively to young people, right? But the teachers aren't 19, right? The professors aren't 24. And so I am not sure, and I don't know what I'm going to be doing 5 years from now, but I'm not sure that a youth organization has to be exclusively youth-led. And I'm grappling with that in my own head, because I don't want to say that as like, that's like up in arms, right? I'm not saying it because I want to keep doing it, because it's really hard. But but anyway, I want us to be thinking about structures that aren't that are accomplishing things that are about ideas and not merely identity. That are accomplishing things rather than merely figuring out kind of who's the ones doing it.
How old are you?
I'm about almost 34, and I apologize for that.
No, that's okay, because I think there are some definitions of youth in which you're still like a youth.
Yes, there
right?
is.
So,
and I am clinging to it like a log in a high sea.
Oh man. No, you I'll come back to later.
I just want to make a couple of quick points. I think, first of all, your question is important. Because there's an issue of, among generations, how we connect on issues. Recognizing that, sometimes you hear, and you said you're old school, Gabe. I live in, in the Atlanta area, and so I have all these civil rights icons around me, and get the privilege, really, of spending time with them and learning from them. And I don't think enough of us do that. We say, well, marching is old, nobody's doing that anymore. But you learn the value of why marching helped. And so I think it is important to have those intergenerational relationships, to make sure that older people feel valuable, because the skills, the things that they have to teach us are valuable. I think in terms of elected officials, we are unique. The young elected officials, we're unique because we serve with a bunch of old folks, not just older, but some of them are just old, old in mind, but also in body and everything else. But to be there and kind of bridge the gap, because not every issue is a young issue. When you talk about poverty and healthcare and all these other things, it's not just young people who are affected by that. And so you have an opportunity to have a seat at the table, to make sure that young people's voices are heard, but you also have an opportunity to take to young people what older folks are saying. So it's a great opportunity to be that bridge, and to make sure that among generations we're communicating more, and we're really getting work done because we're understanding each other and we're speaking the same language.
Okay, let's be able to take two more questions. Okay, Melvin and then Nate.
How you guys doing? Melvin Carter. I run an organization called Urban Embassy, and also running for city council. My question is this, because I've done youth organizing around Florida, and Minnesota now, and different places around the country, and work with Wilson Action and organizations. And I've seen a lot of organizations, and up here, certainly we have different organizations, and we have
Okay, so Melvin, bridging college and campus divide around youth organizing. Who wants it?
Okay. You know, I think internally and externally we struggle with that divide a lot. And I think one of the things that I find really interesting is, for instance, we have a chapter head that's located in Las Vegas, and he started off as a community chapter head, but he was going to junior college at the time. He transferred to UNLV, and then he became the campus chapter head. So he was essentially both of those parties that you're referring to. I think that there are a lot of people like that. I think that there are a lot more people like that than I think Biko is one of those people. I think there's a lot of people in this room that are those people. And I think that sometimes we overemphasize. I mean, it's not that it's not true, because it is very true, but I also think that the opposite is true. I think that there are people who are actually very good at bridging the gap between campus community. I think there are several movements right now, ranging from NCORE, the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity, and other such activities taking place throughout the country that are diligent efforts in bridging that gap. And I think that it's kind of one of those situations where, and I don't mean to be too abstract, but I think we have to actually start really looking for those examples and those models of where it already is successful, because my guess is that you're asking us because you don't have them, right? And that's a problem. Like, I don't have a list of them on me, and my apologies for that, so I need to go home and work on that immediately. But I think that one of the things with the campus and the community divide is that a lot of times we tend to forget that, like, the campus community divide is really like a street. It's like you cross the street and then that's all it is, really. You know what I mean? So it's a matter of kind of how you're planning the event and who you're inviting to the event, or what professors you talk to, because there's a lot of professors that are like, man, I know all these cats over here on this block. We can bring them too. It's kind of a matter of what your intention is, how you're framing the conversation and the discussion and the approach, because of course, if you're just in the community, just think of the community, yeah, you're going to attract just the community. If you're in the campus, you're just thinking of the campus, you're going to attract the campus. But if you're thinking both, you're probably going to attract both.
Okay, one last question, and Nate, if you could be quick on this one. Okay.
My name's Nate Lowenthal, and I'm from the Roosevelt Institution. And I just had a question. There are some people our age who just are not going to get involved in politics. They just don't care. And I think, a lot of the voter registration organizations are like, we're going to get every student in the country to vote, but that's not that feasible. So how do you kind of get the line between doing more outreach, trying to always get more students, and then giving resources to those students who have the skills and the interest and the enthusiasm and passion to, make change and are already kind of enlisted in the political spirit?
All right. Well, I actually don't agree with that statement. I don't think that there's people out there that just don't care. And I'm sorry, Nate, because I work with a lot of students, and I organize a lot of students that everyone would have just ignored. I'm talking about the white Greeks who in their frat houses drinking all the time. I'm talking about the black Greeks who were mostly in the step shows and within their own community and they weren't hanging out. I'm talking about a lot of student organizations, a lot of community groups that for the most part people rubbed them off and turned them away and said they just don't give a shit. And I'm telling you right now, we built those relationships, we got to know them, and we built the coalitions, and we moved them around the issues, right? So that's what matters, right? What needs to be happening is organizing. We need to talk to people. We need to make sure that they have the skills to build their relationships, to understand that they need to be building bridges across communities, to talking to other people, right? We don't want to create this like false divide, this like sort of weird leftist class where there's like the people who are down with the politics and just ignore everyone else because we're just not going to win like that. We're not going to build a majority like that. So, I mean, I guess that would be my answer to that question.
Okay, well,
I'll be quick.
okay, Alisha, then Jeff, and then.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because I get asked that question a lot. And all I will add to this conversation is that's not been my experience. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm not a good organizer. I don't know. But what I say to young people who are in this room, in particular, I try to make people help people understand that, everybody didn't march with Dr. King. Everybody was not a part of the movement, and I don't believe that everybody will be as passionate and as excited. And I think once you recognize that there will be a line, that you have to be comfortable with that and say, I'm doing all that I can. We're getting as many people involved as possible, because those are the people that are really going to make the change that help everybody. And if you get stuck in thinking that everybody has to be there in order for you to be successful, then you won't be. So you have to define success for yourself, and you have to accept and be happy with the people that that are willing to join you, and understand that those are the people that are really going to make the difference. That's what I think.
mean, I sort of think about it like the old Miller Lite tastes great, less filling ads, right? It was, you'd have two groups of people, one yelling tastes great, the other group yelling less filling, and the joke was it was supposed to be both, right? The other joke, it was supposed to be a joke. That was the other funny part. But but I do think I think you point out a cleavage that we don't talk about very often, right? Because so much of what motivates us, I think, as organizers, as people, is to make a world that's slightly less fucked up and more fair. And so we focus, I think, and justifiably so, our energy on the people that are victimized most by that world, right? And at the same time, how do we, both in those communities and communities generally, also foster excellence, right? How do we work? It's sort of like the honors classes debate, right? Do you invest in making sure that everybody can read, or do you invest in the next Einstein? And to me, I'm like, I think it's not the tyranny of or, but the genius of and. Like, why not both? And like, tax rich people more. Please don't tape that. But just find the resources to do both things. I disavow what I just said. I'm kidding. I don't. So it'll get used against me. Doesn't matter. I've cursed also today. And otherwise, I think we're done. And the only thing I would like to say is, again, thank you guys. You guys are priceless. Definition of priceless: worth a lot, not for sale.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you are inspired and interested. And again, information on the flyers. Thank you all.
Yes, indeed.